Welcome back to Too Much Future, your not one-stop shop, although it could be one-stop shop. It's the show where we play through the Fallout games and we talk about them in critical and interesting ways. I'm Cameron.
I'm Michael.
Michael, today we're on episode 39. We're playing New Vegas. This is our third episode of New Vegas. We've had a good time so far. Someone went back and found me. They left a comment somewhere in the YouTube channel of somewhere in Fallout 2, I think I said that my opinion of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas is about the same. My enjoyment is about the same. And I will say that about at this point, episode 3 to episode 3, my enjoyment is about the same. There's a big difference between the end of Fallout 3, which I would say is one of the least enjoyable things I've ever experienced in a video game world, and the much more pleasurable beginning of Fallout New Vegas. But we're in the spot where it was still the beautiful world of Fallout 3, and we're still I'm having a really good time so far in New Vegas. But that could always change. That could always alter. We did a lot of different stuff in this episode, to the extent where you and I have not even conferred about what we actually did.
Mm-hmm.
But we had one goal. You told me one goal. Let's get into, at the end of this episode, let's get into the Vegas Strip.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big place we're going. Big plot wise, we got shot in the head. We are after a guy named Benny. Last episode, we went all over, kind of ping-ponged all around the central, or maybe the southern part of the map.
Yes.
I don't know, southern part of the map, looking for places to go and things like that. Chasing this guy named Benny, and we found out he is in New Vegas. And so at the end of this episode, we got to get into New Vegas. But there's all kinds of stuff you can do in this game before that, right? This is a big open world. Wild stuff. So, Michael, what did you actually end up doing on your way to New Vegas? Because I did 4 or 5 quests. I think you did way more than I did even. So we'll just talk through it. And I tried to the best of my ability write down the names of these quests, but I don't have all of them. So we'll feel it out as we go.
Yeah. So I came up from Boulder City is kind of where we last left off. And you come up from Boulder City into New Vegas, and as you're coming up, it's again a sort of nice bit of environmental design because you're on the old interstate moving up toward the city, and as you're coming up, you're passing all of these billboards that are advertising the casinos that you're going to find in New Vegas. We don't know that yet, but we're doing some set dressing here. We're setting some things up, so that's nice.
I have one thing to interject before your story gets going.
Okay.
You remember at the end of I forgot, otherwise I would have said this already. You remember at the end of last episode where you were like, yeah, Victor showed up and I talked to him?
Yeah.
In Boulder City?
Uh-huh.
And I said, yeah, I didn't see Victor. It must have been because of the way I saved, or I didn't go anywhere. So I loaded my game for this play session, and I assumed, hey, I'm going to see Victor. I actually kind of walked around a little bit. No Victor. Didn't show up. I go outside of Boulder City. No Victor. Didn't show up. I start walking along the interstate like you're talking about. I'm seeing these billboards, and I'm just scanning around, kind of looking around in third-person mode. And I pan over, I think, to maybe the right, and I can see Victor barreling toward me over a dune, and it scared the shit out of me. It was so scary because he's so big.
Yeah.
And no, he doesn't look in. So I'm like looking around, and he's not there one moment, and I just turn a little bit, and then he's there, and then it grabs my screen and makes me talk to him. And it really was viscerally scary to me.
Yeah.
But I did eventually meet Victor, and he told me the same things. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew, and that you knew that I did eventually talk to Victor, although not in the same way. But you're on the road; you're headed to New Vegas.
Yeah, and it's cool because I'm coming up, and I actually come up on the city as the sun is setting, so I get to watch the city light up, and you can see there's walls built around it and everything. And this is obviously much more built up and I guess functioning again in a way that we didn't see any of that in Fallout 3. And while in Fallout 2 specifically, we had a lot of places that like Vault City, there's some parallels here. But in Fallout 2, we had places that were built up, but we weren't seeing them from kind of this first person perspective. And so the impact was kind of different. And I think that it was a cool way to kind of come into Vegas. And then you have to go around the city in this weird way to like enter through the north. And I actually remembered this from my first time playing because I got super lost and confused, and that also happened again this time. I just was like, for some reason, like I have to like I come up to the city from the south and then have to walk around it, and I'm like, what is this? What's going on? It just frazzles my brain. But eventually, I get into like North Vegas Square and a settlement called Freeside, which turns out to be the entrance to the strip. But and it's part of Old Vegas, but it's not really New Vegas proper. This is sort of the part that Mr. House has not taken under his direct control, and so it's kind of a weird little more anarchic settlement growing off of New Vegas, and there is a security uh like checkpoint here at the beginning where there are a bunch of securitrons with old-timey cartoon cops on their view screens, a lot less friendly than Victor, and
Mhm.
they tell you that you can only go into the strip if you have at least 1,000 caps, or if you have somehow already some sort of passport. The other option that at least I had was to try to hack the robot, sort of, I guess, verbally, to just be like, "Let me pass, machine," or something. Like that's the dialogue choice, but
Yes.
that didn't work because I don't have enough caps and I don't have enough robot skills or whatever. So I have to figure out some other things. Obviously, this is like a callback to Vault City from Fallout 2, where you could only enter if you had a passport, and there was a whole sort of like complex citizenship system going on there. A little nod, I guess, to things that happened in Fallout 2. Although the big difference here is that New Vegas is not also trying to like present itself as somehow like a bastion of freedom and old world values in the way that Vault City was. Really, it's just Mr. House doesn't want people on the strip if they don't have money to spend there, and it's crappy and authoritarian, but I guess at least he's honest. uh so Freeside, there's stuff going on here. There's a another classic Fallout thing, and an exposition NPC that you meet right by the door, a dude named Old Ben, who tells you all about sort of the situation here, and he mentions that this place is run sort of by a gang called the Kings, and they're running out of a old Elvis impersonator school, although of course Elvis is never mentioned by name. And you go in, and it's an entire gang of people who are Elvis impersonators, uh, which I really really like. I I,
Ye-
I love this idea.
Yeah, I remember really liking it back when I played the game the first time, and I was a little bit hesitant going into this episode. I was like, I really like that, and I have like good, strong memories of it. And I was worried it like wouldn't hold up in some way, and it does. Like all the beats still work. It's self aware in a way that is not treating it like a goofy joke. Like you end up talking to the king, who's like the gang leader, and
Mhm.
he's like, yeah, this was some sort of school that was for a religion, maybe. Like
Yes.
it's not quite mythological in the way like a Fallout 3 would do it, but it's also it's pretty deeply materialist, right? He's like, we found a bunch of tapes and we could hear him singing, so we know what he sounded like, and we know what his costumes looked like, and we know he was called the King because of all these posters, and we know that people wanted to act like him for some reason, but we don't really get it. And and there's not, I think if this were in Fallout 3, right, there would be this like he would not be a gang leader, he would be like a priestly order guy,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
he would speak of the king in this voice. Can you imagine the powers of the king? And he's not like that. He's just like, yeah, he seemed to be like a pretty important guy, and his values of like hard work are kind of like ours.
Hmm.
And so he does it. What's interesting is that um the kings, they have kind of his like haunted greaser outfit, not
Uh-huh.
not quite a haunted greaser, I get, but his like slick back hair, leather jackety kind of thing. They have his like prison outfit,
Hmm.
like jailhouse rock style, but they don't really have army.
No.
Elvis Presley, right? Which was a big part of him. And I wonder if that, like, I kind of get that confuses the aesthetic of the Kings a little bit,
Hmm.
especially when NCR are running around and things like that. But it is an interesting kind of gap there about why, because
Hmm.
that's such an important part. Like, there's the King in like his, rhinestone jumpsuit.
Right.
There's, Jailhouse Rock. There is leather jacket, and then there's army fatigues, right? That's
Hmm.
such a huge part of his like kind of mythology as
I
Elvis.
was gonna
And
say the only other one would be like the Hawaiian shirt Elvis.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And yeah, so I wonder, we always are talking about, and people in the Discord often are talking about, and on the wikis too, about like when did the timeline diverge, and obviously it was before Elvis, because otherwise, maybe like this just didn't happen for Elvis.
Hmm.
The military and the rhinestone suit and all the other stuff
Yeah.
just never occurred. I have one little thing before we keep talking about Freeside. So after I spoke to Victor, the cowboy robot,
Hmm.
he says, "Oh, I guess I'll meet you in New Vegas," and then he just starts beelining it for New Vegas.
Hmm.
And we were on the road together at the same time, right? I didn't have to like go through a load screen or anything with him, and so I just started following him.
Hmm.
I was fishing for another Papa Neeson moment.
Yes.
And he will attack things.
Uh-huh.
I saw him kill some dogs, but mostly he just like, as the crow flies, went there. And so I actually kind of went over the countryside and got there and didn't go along the road. And like there's all kinds of pipes and stuff, like oil pipes everywhere,
Hmm.
for pipelines. I don't quite know what's up with that. Maybe we'll learn more about that in the game. But otherwise, very similar story of getting to New Vegas with you, into Freeside. So you went and talked to the Kings. Did you do their quest line?
Yeah. Well, so I talked to the king himself, and he told me that there was a guy I think named like I think I wrote it down, but I can't find it in my notes. Like Orin or Oris or something, who's giving people tours of Freeside, and
Mm-hmm.
there's something fishy about it. Right, he's getting like really good user reviews basically on post-apocalyptic Yelp. And the Kings are kind of suspicious of what's going on there. Because the other thing that I mentioned about Freeside is that because it is kind of anarchic, there are just like Freeside thugs, quote unquote, spawning in the streets kind of semi randomly and shooting at you and everyone. So, like, that's a thing that's happening. And so there are people, as soon as you step in, who are like, here, I will show you the way around. I'll show you the ropes because this place can be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a lot of lots of thugs, but not a lot of peasants.
Yeah.
This is a real move from the Fallout 2 imagination.
Yeah. So, I step outside, Lucky Nell steps outside, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go check that out, but I want to see what's down this other street first. And so if you head across from the Kings, there's this other little side street, and there are two buildings here. One is called the Atomic Wrangler Casino, and then the other one is called the Silver Rush Casino. But the Silver Rush has actually been turned into a weapons store. The Atomic Wrangler is straight up just like a normal sort of casino bar lounge kind of area. And I pop in here and see what's going on. And I learn a little bit about the area, about the Atomic Wrangler itself. Some other like they let me know that NCR is kind of in town, and NCR and the Kings aren't exactly getting along, but they're not really in open conflict. And it's all kind of up in the air as to how that's going to shake out. There's also the followers of the apocalypse are here. They've taken up residence in an old Mormon fort. And like the Atomic Wrangler specifically just, sells booze and drugs to people in Freeside. And the other thing that they sell, it turns out, is sex. And I get a quest here where the guy, I think his name is James Garrett, who's working the bar, is like, yeah, actually, I need, 3 more sex workers. By the way, this is not the term that is used in the game. I think they, I think that they refer to just prostitutes, but
there's a plenitude of terms used.
Yeah.
I will say.
Yeah. So he's like, continue.
No. I just in the spirit, I think of this is the way people talk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's Freeside. People talk rough. Because this has got a little bit of like a cowboy vibe to it, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the rough and tumble town that is for people just making a way. They're riding off the wasteland and they're just making a living,
Mm-hmm.
And so I really associate all these kind of Garrett quests, because there's 2 quests you can do here. They very much feel to me like your gosh, what are they called? kind of like the post Golden Age westerns. I'm forgetting what they're called, but like Unforgiven, for example.
Revisionist westerns.
Yeah. Oh, there's another term too, but yes, they are revisionist westerns. But where it's the idea of like we are going to take the scenes and settings of the western, and rather than it be, I don't know, Rio Grande, right? It's going to be serious, gritty, quote unquote realistic stuff, and that's what this feels like to me. It's like taking the Fallout stuff and doing that to it, very much in the way that Fallout 2 regularly did. But yeah, anyway, so he gives you this quest, and he says he has basically three clients or three sets of clientele that need specialty workers here, and he needs you to go recruit them, basically.
Yeah, he needs so he has someone who is into ghouls and cowboys. So we need someone who is both a ghoul and a cowboy. The second person, we need a suave talker, someone who can really give the full boyfriend experience, I believe is what he says. And then the third is that there are these, quote, disgusting robot fetishists who really want a sex bot. So he also needs a sex bot.
Yes, and he's very clear. The other ones are very non-judgmental.
Yeah,
in a broad sense. He's just like, yeah, these are the people that we're looking for. These are our clientele are asking for them. But he's really negative about robot sex. He hates it. Like, there's multiple lines where he's like, "Oh, I can't believe people want this. Can't believe it. But I got to do it, right? Like, it's a part of the service. It's what we do here. So if you can find it, I guess go do it."
So yeah, I go ahead and I pick up this quest. And I guess a thing that I should say is that one of the elements that has returned from old school Fallout 2 Eleanor style gameplay here is that I am just going to lean into every quest as it is given to me. Or at least that was my initial thought. This goes wrong here in fairly short order. So I get this quest, and then I zip across the street, because I'm like, oh, I can look for those people later. And I go to the Silver Rush, and I get stopped outside by the guard named Simon, who's like, well, I need to check you for weapons, because, I don't know, like, this is, I work for dangerous people, and we gotta keep this going. So anyway, he checks me for weapons, takes all my guns, and I get to go into the Silver Rush, which is now a sort of outpost for the Van Graffs, who are kind of a weapons cartel, specifically energy weapons cartel. And you get this scene when you walk in where Gloria Van Graff, who is running this establishment, is talking to someone who has changed like what he wanted out of his order, and then to sort of make the point that she's a hard-nosed businessman and that the Van Graff family doesn't mess around. She shoots someone with an energy weapon and turns them into a pile of ash. So that's established. I go and I talk to her, and she's like, hey, like, welcome or whatever, I don't know. Like, she tells me a little bit about the Van Graffs. I can ask about them. They're from NCR. They were kind of, they still are, right, an independent weapons cartel. And they gathered quite a bit of power in California, and then moved in here to the Mojave and took over this casino and started selling their wares. And they are not huge fans of the NCR, but she also explains that we can't fight the NCR, right? The Van Graffs have the weaponry and sort of the manpower of a small army, but the NCR has the weaponry and manpower of a very, very big army. So their kind of business model at this point just seems to be like trying to outrun the NCR so they can continue to have sort of full control over their markets and supply lines or whatever.
Well, we all know you can't fight City Hall and you can't fight corporate America.
Yeah. So she says, I asked her if she has any work, because lucky Nell, she's just leaning into it. Like, yeah, I have things to do, but I don't know, other stuff might happen. And
that's very much, just to make it clear, that's very much the way this is set up. It's very similar to Fallout 2, where it's like you can go talk to these people, and there literally is a dialogue option that says, do you have any work? Because the game, it's very similar to Baldur's Gate 2, the kind of move in chapter 2 of that game to move to chapter 3, which is just, hey, you gotta go do a bunch of stuff to get a bunch of money. Like, more money than you would have just run into in this game so far. And so, there's that credit check, or you can do the passport to get into New Vegas. And this is using the exact same gating maneuver. And so you're very much encouraged here to like go around and talk to all these people for work so that you can make that money. And almost all of these explicitly say in the thing, like, this is how much money you're going to make doing this quest. So it's very programmatic in that way, but it also is, I think it's like it's still, pretty, even going back 20 years, the Baldur's Gate 2 still kind of works as a gameplay mechanic or a gameplay maneuver or a way of setting boundaries on what we're doing in the game right now. Like, it's very clear what you got to do. There's a bunch of different pathways to get that money, but, figure it out.
Yeah. So I agreed to work with Gloria, and what she needed was someone to guard the door out front with Simon for a night. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I go out there and I meet up with Simon, and he gives me like my Van Graff armor and my laser pistol. And very, very sort of amusingly, my companions are still here. So Boone and Edie are just kind of like standing guard with us. And you stand in place out in front of the doors. And did you do this quest?
No, I did not.
Okay.
That I went to the guy in the, and he said, "Hey, I need your weapons," and I said, "No, you're not going to do that." And he says, "Well, you're not going in here then." And I said, "Okay." And I never tried to go back. So no, I did not do this.
Well, so you stand out here, and the Simon, like, you just stand in place and you look around and you can't change your weapons or armor. And Simon kind of makes comments. He's like, "Hey, someone's coming. Like, you're on, buddy." And the first person who comes up is this man who's just, his name is Drunk, right? He is just a drunk, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, can you let me in?" The other thing that Simon does also is he like gives you the rules, right? We don't let anyone who is like drunk or obviously on something. If people are irate, we don't let them in. We always do weapons checks, that sort of thing. So the drunk comes up and I turn him away, and Simon's like, "Good job." And then the next person who comes up is just a gambler, is what he's called. And he's like, "I was wondering if I might buy some weapons." And I'm like, "Well, I have to search you first." And he's like, "Sure thing." And he's fine. And then I, let him in. Then the next guy comes up. He's another gambler, and you tell him, "Sorry, I'm going to have to search you." And he gets kind of, he pushes back on this a little. He's like, "Wait a minute, what are you trying to, insinuate about me? I'm just a regular guy." Da, 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 da. And I get a speech check where I can say, like, "Calm down, man. It's just, it's the practice of the thing." And that works. So he, calms down, and then he gets to go in. And then another guy, also called Gambler, comes up, and he's acting a little weird. But I tell him what I've told everyone, which is that, if you're going to come in, we're going to have to search you. And then he just freaks out, and he's like, "Oh man, I knew this wasn't going to work." And then he, like, goes hostile. And then Simon beside me pulls his weapon, and I have to shoot this guy, blow off his head with my laser pistol. And then I loot his corpse, and there is a note on his corpse that proves that he is, like, he was on a suicide mission, basically, I think, to go in and detonate a bomb to kill the Van Graffs, because he blames the Van Graffs and their weapons trade for the deaths of some people close to him. So, the Van Graffs have enemies. The fifth person who comes up is Pacer, who is like the lieutenant of the Kings. And he wants to go inside to see Gloria because there is a thing between them. And when I say thing, I mean kind of a one-sided thing where Pacer is like, basically, it seems like he's just sort of dropping by constantly to try to sexually harass her. And Simon won't let him in. And I have the option, like, I mean, at any point here, I should be clear that I could just like whip out my gun and just start shooting all of these people. But Eleanor, is very, very diplomatic, and she talks Pacer sort of down. Basically, is like, "Yeah, sure, I'll tell her whatever you need said," and then ignore him. And so he goes off, and Simon congratulates you on keeping your cool, and that's sort of your first job. So I go back in and I tell Gloria that that worked out. She gives me some money. I think probably at this point I have enough money to go buy my entry into the strip. But that's not how Lucky Nell rolls. I want more work. So I ask her, what's the next thing for me to do? And she's like, "Well, I need you to deliver a package to a discrete location." And I'm like, "Great, fine." And so she gives me some sort of parcel, and then I have to go sort of southeast of New Vegas, kind of, so southeast of Vegas. directly south of Vegas is kind of NCR headquarters, right? NCR has taken over the airport here, and they're kind of running all of their operations out of that. And then there are uh, a bunch of like little farms out sort of into the southeast that are very interestingly enough called they're the NCR Sharecroppers. Did you see this?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I did not.
Yeah, so the
Hmm.
NCR is running apparently some sort of like sharecropping model with their, I guess, population of settlers that they're bringing out here. It,
From peasants to sharecroppers. The
yeah.
oh, wait, hold on. Let's come up with our like essay title,
Uh-huh.
right? Like
Uh-huh.
this is our academic from peasants to sharecroppers, an agricultural economic analysis of the Fallout universe.
Yes. If for some reason you're listening and you do not know what sharecropping is, that is when you farm land that you do not own. Someone else owns it. And as part of you being able to live on that land, the crops that you grow and whatever profits may be made from them go to the person who owns that land rather than you. Or if you do get something, it's an incredibly small percentage compared to what you're actually producing. And in the United States, at least, this had its most famous kind of formation in the South post Civil War, when this was one of the ways that the free, like recently freed African Americans were brought back under the control of the white landed gentry. So not a great history sharecropping.
Yeah.
So I am going through kind of the sharecropping area, and there's just I get sort of lost. It's hard to find on my map marker. But eventually I just find this guy, and he's literally just standing out in the middle of the desert. And when I look at him, I think his name is just like Strange Man. And he takes the package, and I have an opportunity, I think, to try to like force more caps out of him, but I don't have the speech check to make it work. And so I give him that, and then he heads off. I head back to Gloria, and she's like, "Great job. Here's some more money. Also, my brother Jean Baptiste is in the back, and he has a job for you now." So I go and I talk to Jean Baptiste, and he's like, "Hey, man, like Gloria tells me you're good at things. Here's a thing that I would like you to do. I want you to go find Rose of Sharon Cassidy, who is a caravaner that we have some business with, and I want you to bring her back here." And so my next objective is to find Rose of Sharon Cassidy and bring her to the Silver Rush. But I don't know where she
And
is.
is she a Rose of Sharon or is he a Rosh Hashanah?
Well, Rose of Sharon.
Yeah, okay.
She calls
That's a real question.
right. This will be explained. What Cameron and I are talking about will be explained shortly.
Hmm.
um, so I head south of New Vegas to the Crimson Caravan headquarters, where I meet a woman who is in charge. Crimson Caravan, by the way, showed up in I think Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. It's one of the sort of trade route companies that springs up in what becomes the NCR and is now, I guess, moving out into the Mojave. There's a woman in charge here named Alice Lafferty, and she's like, "Well, if you're looking for Cassidy, she's probably at the like Mojave outpost, right? Which is like the outpost that the NCR holds to the very, very south of the map. That is like the gateway between NCR territory proper and the Mojave."
Hmm.
So I head down there, and I find Cass drinking away her sorrows in like the sort of bar, right? Because this is a whole NCR outpost, and she explains that her caravan is trying to come through. She has goods she needs to move, but they aren't letting her in. The you know the NCR is not letting her in. They've grounded kind of all through traffic because Caesar's Legion is making incursions in this area. So she's depressed about that. I can't do anything else with her, so I zip back and I talk to Alice Lafferty again, and she's like, "Well, you know what would actually be really helpful is if you just let Crimson Caravan buy Cassidy caravans outright. So here's kind of our offer. Go back to Cass and let her know, and we'll see how it goes." So I go back and I talk to Cass, and I learned some stuff about her. Cameron, if you haven't picked it up yet, this is Cassidy's daughter from Fallout 2.
The immortal Cassidy.
Yeah. And this was his caravan company that apparently he started after wandering with what were we called in Fallout 2? The Chosen One.
The Chosen One,
Yeah. So after he did his thing with the Chosen One, apparently he, started up his own sort of caravan company. Um, and she, feels sort of sad about giving up this caravan company, but also maybe not so sad because it sort of seems like a career dead end. And plus, her dad like walked out on her and her mom. And he also named her. He named her after a what was it? I think a book, a character in a book of Dust Bowl Okies, which of course, like Rose of Sharon or Rose of Sharon is the name of a character in Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. So that's where her name comes from. And then at some point when Cass was a kid, her father left and went east. So you remember how Cassidy in Fallout 2 was constantly just saying, "I think I'll head east. I think I'll head to the Midwest." Like he did.
Yeah, he's
it.
like, I hear they got big tornadoes or whatever you say.
Yes. So he did it. Good for him. Although he, ditched his family to do so. Anyway, she eventually like agrees and she sells the caravan company. And now Alice Lafferty is happy and Cass really has nothing else going for her. So I'm like, hey, why don't you join my party? Because this is going to be the other returning Eleanor thing, is that if I meet a party member, I'm going to recruit them.
How many can you get? Do you know?
You can only have 2 with you at the same time, but I'm thinking there's like maybe 8 or 9 companions total.
Yeah, I've run into a couple.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Yeah. So I get Cass to come with me, and I have to send Boone home. Boone goes back to Novak because you can only have 1 human and 1 non-human companion with you. With Cass in tow, I head back to the Silver Rush, and I go in and I tell Jean-Baptiste, like, hey, like, I found Cassidy, like, she's here, isn't this great? And he's like, great, now it's time to kill her. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? That's not what I wanted to do. So for many, many minutes, Cass, Edie, and I try to figure out how to murder everyone in this shop. They murder us quite frequently, but somehow eventually, after like using a stealth boy and like going out and dropping mines everywhere, I managed to blow up everyone. And we're fine. Van Graff's no longer like me, but here is where something interesting happens. The quest glitches.
Oh no.
Well,
New Vegas.
Like how it glitches is that the quest with the Van Graffs is kind of ended, but when I picked up Cass, I also got her companion quest. And so one of the ways that companions work in this game, very sort of more contemporary RPG design, is that each of the companions has a quest that you can do that will tell you more kind of about their backstory and where they're from and what their whole deal is. And for some of these people, you kind of have to work on them a little bit. I think, my sort of rule going forward also is that in addition to picking up every NPC I can, I'm going to try to do all of their quests if I can. So these will be completed eventually, but Cass's starts just as you pick her up, and I did not even realize it was her companion quest. So I get like looped out on her companion quest, where it turns out the other thing that's been happening with Cassidy caravans is that they've been losing shipments, right? People have been attacking them, and normally it's just like raiders or whatever, it's the sort of thing that happens in the wasteland, but it's been happening with a kind of consistent strangeness. And normally there would be some mystery here as to what was going on, except actually what happens is that as soon as I blow up the Van Graffs, this quest updates to head back to Crimson Caravan and settle the score with Alice Lafferty. And it's like, wait a minute, what? So I haven't done like what happened, and I haven't even finished this quest. And so like what is supposed to happen is you're supposed to like investigate all of these like sites where Cassidy caravan shipments were taken out, and you find evidence that they were all taken out with energy weapons. And so Lafferty in some way was working with the Van Graffs to undermine Cassidy caravans so Crimson Caravan could buy them out. this process of deduction, I am spared. The game glitch gods just beam it directly into my head and make this quest, for now at least, apparently unfinishable. Because whenever I talk to Alice Lafferty, because I haven't tripped the other flags, like there's nothing I can do with her. Um,
Mhm.
this is also the point where I should mention that in terms of like total playtime, I played maybe 6 hours of this game.
Yeah, I can tell.
Um,
I think that's pretty clear.
yeah. So like that's where sort of that whole quest line ends up, and then of course I did the Atomic Wrangler as well, which it sounds like kind of you did too. Do you want to talk a little bit your experience with that?
Yeah, the well, one thing I want to say too is you might want to save your game and maybe like back up your save, but I think you can just use the console commands to reset a quest, right?
Oh, probably.
Yeah, I think you can just. I think in any of the like, but whatever the engine. I was gonna say the Gamebryo engine, but I don't think that's what it's called. This like Bethesda Fallout engine, right? I think for any of that, there's console commands for resetting like companions, like where they are, and resetting quests and setting their flags to 0 and all that stuff. I've looked that up before for some other reason. But I think you. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say you can finish that thought, but I had one other thing I wanted to mention about Cass.
That is the end of the thought.
Okay. So one other thing about Cass that I wanted to mention, just so we're clear kind of on what her character is that she's just like constantly she's always drinking, right? She is drinking, and like constantly swearing. Like that's sort of her whole character, right? Is that she's like this like sort of like willowy thin like cowgirl who just cusses like a sailor, and it has apparently had a very hard life. And one of the things that I thought was extremely funny is that when you tell her like, oh, I know this guy named Jean Baptiste who wants to see you, she doesn't know who these people are. And so she's like, Jean Baptiste, like did he like break his name or something? Well, maybe he's just a Canadarian. Which I love, the idea that like Canadaria is what people call Canada now, right? Or that the people from what used to be Canada are now Canadarians, or like the like French Canadians or Acadians have become Canadarians. So it was
Why get brave, Fallout makers? Put one of these in Canada. Give us Canada DLC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I did all these Atomic Wrangler quests. Because the one you didn't mention is the other one, which is just debt collection. It's not particularly interesting. You go around and you find these people who have debts, and you are trying to collect from them. The only one that was really interesting is that for one of them, you can either collect the money from her, or she says like, "Look, I invested all my money in a caravan, and all the money's there. I promise." You can like basically opt to like beat it out of her, and just take whatever money she has, or you can go and see if if you can find this caravan. And I did that, and it took me like into the wasteland a little bit to a thing that's called like Brock Flower Cave, and I like went down into it and did some stuff. So that's like fun or whatever. But for the most part, that was just walking around and doing it. That quest wasn't particularly interesting, but I did do this one where you're like recruiting all these people that we were talking about before. The other thing I want to talk about too is Hadrian. Did you talk to Hadrian or pay attention to Hadrian in the casino?
I don't think I talked to Hadrian at all.
Hadrian is the ghoul who's like standing around.
Yes.
Yeah. Who was an insult comic.
Yes.
So he's a ghoul who is an insult comic, and he, depending on, I don't know when it happens, but it's like a certain time of day, he will go onto the stage and he will do insult comic routines, but like geared toward you. So I pulled them up here so I can talk about them. So he says, there's apparently 2 jokes for each special stat that you have. One which is if it's high, or one if it's low. And so this is one of the low ones. So this is low for perception. I tell you, you got great eyes. You could see a super mutant at 3 paces. And there's no one to laugh. So it's just like he's reading them. And the voice actor was reading these things really quick. So they're very fast happening, but it's a fun little thing. And I talked to him and learned a little bit about him. And he's just a ghoul who's good at insulting people. But yeah, going and doing these recruitment quests, I ended up kind of doing the recruitment quest interleaved with a bunch of other stuff, just because it kind of takes you all around. I don't. Did we finish talking about? We'll come back to the Kings later.
Yeah.
We did not finish talking about that quest, but okay, we'll come back to the Kings in a bit. You got to find a ghoul cowboy, you got to find a smooth talker, and you got to find a robot. The smooth talker seemed the easiest because I've already talked to Old Ben, and if you talk to Old Ben, you can kind of get like he's a really interesting character because he tells you less about the area like a Fallout 2 NPC would. You know, they'd be like, here are the 9 characters who matter here, and here's what they're about. But he more gives you like, what is the flavor of life in New Vegas? And so he basically gives you like a rags to riches to rags to retirement story. Where he's like, yeah, I was born in Freeside, and then I like did enough work and became trusted enough to go work in the casinos to be kind of a bouncer kind of guy. And I did that, but then one of the mob bosses who like runs the casino, I was flirting a bit too much with his wife, and then I got kind of busted back down into Freeside. I got framed for robbing someone, and then I had to become a sex worker, and I didn't like doing that at all. And so then I saved up a bunch of money and I retired. The end. And he kind of tells you all that in different chunks of story. And so he's smooth talking, he's doing all this. So I go back to him and I was like, hey, do you want to do that? And it's a really this is a kind of touch that I really associate with this Obsidian style of game where I like went and talked to him. I was like, hey, would you be interested in that? And he's like, I told you a long story about how I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
and that I wasn't interested in doing it. And I actually worked really hard to not do sex work anymore. Why would you ask me that? And I'm like, well, I thought you'd be interested. And he was like, no, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about? And so I ended up going and finding someone else named Santiago, who is just like a one-line NPC, not particularly well thought out, I didn't think. So that's my smooth talker. That was the easiest one to handle.
Yeah, it's also who I got. He's like a Latin lover stereotype.
Yeah, a little unfortunate. I'm not into that. Very 1950s too stereotype, like not just like Latin lover in a general sense, but a very particular kind. The other one that I go to is I go over to what's the name of the weapon shop?
Mick and Ralph's.
Mick and Ralph's, yeah. That's the only lead I really get out of this. You know, I'm asking, where would I find a robot? And he's like, hey, go over to Mick and Ralph's. They might know. So I go over to Mick and Ralph are like, I think Ralph is the selling you like fun stuff, and he's kind of the gearhead, and then Mick is the like weapons guy, basically. And they're kind of like illicit traders, basically. You know, they run an appropriate store, you know, quote unquote, but then they have like stuff that's illegal to buy here too, if you're savvy about it. So I talked to him. I'm like, hey, where do you think I could find a sex robot? And he says, well, you need to make, you know, like immediately he's already thinking about it. He's like, well, you need to make like a program to turn it into a sex robot. Like there wouldn't just be a robot running around who wanted to have sex. You would need to, you know, come up with a program. I was like, well, do you think you could make the program? And he was like, yeah, I could. I would know exactly how to do that if you had the money for it. So I like hand over some money. He makes me this robot sex module. And then they tell me about this place that's like a robot facility. And I kind of got to run around Freeside a little bit. It's kind of tucked away in the corner. I find it. There's a bunch of rats here. I clear them out. And then I find Protectron. There we go. A Protectron unit. And it's just like available to upload whatever you want. So I upload the sex robot like logic into it. And it's like, I'm a robot. I will have sex with you.
Well, it has a name, Cameron.
It has a name. Its name. I don't. Do you have the full name written out?
I do not. Hold
on. Wait. Yeah, I want to search it out. I want to be able to read the full name out. Fully integrated security technotronic officer, aka Fisto. Which is such like this is such a 1990s ass joke that it loops around from being like really corny into being legitimately funny, I think. And his catchphrase is "assume the position."
Yeah,
which is it's goofy. It's a goofy thing. He says like I'm programmed to please and things like that. And so you go back to.
Oh wait, did you? He offers his services.
Yeah, I'm not into the sex robot.
Okay, yeah.
Were you into seeing what the sex robot had to offer?
Lucky Nell decided no, but
Okay,
I
yeah.
just know from previous playthroughs, like
What happens? Is it like cut to black and you hear like a bunch of funny noises, or
it
what's going
fades to
on?
black and you hear the sound of like power drills spinning up.
Hey, that's good. That's good. That's good, clean fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that happens. But you go back to talk to James Garrett, and he's like, and you're like, hey, because with all of these, you got to go back and like report, hey, I found the person you were looking for. And you go back and I'm like, hey, I found the sex robot. And he's like, oh my God, are you serious? Yes.
He's thrilled.
So excited. He's so excited. He's like, yes, I can't believe. Well, these perverts, I guess, will really enjoy this robot. And, this is obviously this kind of like, it's the kind of thing that I don't think is shocking, where it's like the person who's really interested in policing other people's sexuality is actually the person who is really interested in doing that. That's a narrative we find all over in our culture. I don't know how interested I am in it being so pervasive, but it's a funny joke here.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Here's a note for you in the Fisto fandom Fallout Wikipedia thing. Fisto only attacks with its right arm. I don't know what that means, but that's an interesting bit of information.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's super jazzed about that. The one that I had trouble with was finding a robot cowboy.
You mean a ghoul cowboy?
Well, I had a hard time with the robot cowboy too, but yeah, a ghoul cowboy. Actually, I guess we've already found a robot cowboy. That would have been easy.
Yeah. It's
yeah,
like, hey,
ghoul,
Victor,
whoa.
you got any plans?
I really wish. Maybe I'll edit together some footage here, but I really wish that we could get like Fisto and Victor and Slim from that town, get them all together as like a ragtag team fighting against for good.
Yes.
That'd be great. But yeah, finding a ghoul cowboy, I ended up going into the old Mormon Fort that is here outside of Vegas. Is there an old Mormon Fort in real Vegas?
I presumably. I have never been to Vegas.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I've never been to an old Mormon Fort anywhere, but certainly not in Vegas. And anyway, so it's like this location. You find out
it's
that
a state park.
Okay, and it's like right there.
I mean, it's sort of. I think it is. It is in the city. I think it's one of those things where it was outside of what was the city when it was originally built, and then the city grew up around it.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I go in there, and this is where the followers of the apocalypse are.
Haven't heard from them in a while.
Yeah, so these are the same people whose house we blew up at the end of Fallout 1. Is that true?
Wait, what? The house? Yeah, because the game is broken in such a way that the followers of the apocalypse can never have a good ending.
Yeah, right? Isn't that true?
Yeah, that is true, because like they get like decimated, because again, the game is glitched. Like there was supposed to be a good ending for them, but you can never get it. And then I don't think they show up at all in Fallout 2.
Let's see. Yeah, positive ending unfinished. Yeah, you're initially yeah, okay. Anyway, so they're showing back up again, and they're kind of I talked to them a little bit, and they're kind of like a faction who's interested in doing research. Kind of like, what if there was a faction that was doing what Moira was doing in Fallout 3?
And if they were all kind of crust punks, or at least that was in Fallout 1, it started out like these were sort of like World of Darkness players, right? Who in the post-apocalypse have decided that they're going to like rebuild society.
Yeah, like, I mean, one of them here is like, she is a doctor who has a mohawk, and that's just like normal. And that's not to say in the real world doctors can't have mohawks, but there's a certain genre of post-apocalyptic doctor that I don't normally associate with a mohawk. But anyway, so you go in here and you kind of like run around and you can do some stuff, and there is a ghoul cowboy here who like kind of explains that she wants to drink and she can't drink, and because the followers of the apocalypse don't like it because they're trying to help people who are alcoholics get clean here. It's part of their like aid mission. They are so anyway, and kind of explains that she's into like um I don't know, an expansive array of sexual practices maybe
Hmm.
is kind of what she explains. And you kind of get the breadcrumb, and obviously there's a quest marker here to say this is someone who is obviously a ghoul cowboy and is involved in this quest somehow, but it's really opaque about how you make that happen, and I don't have a good speech skill or a good barter skill, so I just can't do it. And I was like, oh, is this quest just bugged for me and I can never do it, or not bugged, but incompletable? And I looked on the wiki, and it was like you can get a bottle of absinthe. And so I actually found a trader outside of town who allowed me to buy absinthe, and I said, hey, I'll give you this bottle of absinthe if you go and take this job, and you can drink as much absinthe as you want. And she was like, yeah, that sounds great. So that was a really weird, roundabout way of doing that. But I did that, and that's the end of the quest, and all these people now like hang out in the casino. Yeah, so fun. I would say like the Fisto part highlighted this quest. The rest of it is kind of like fetch questy, whatever stuff.
Yeah.
I will say this in comparative, something that I'm really feeling here in Freeside is that in Fallout 3, it was often go somewhere, go into the dungeon, and do the thing you got to do in the dungeon, and that was kind of where it's at. That was the meat of the quest. Here, there is a lot more, I would say, like old school design, and maybe a negative way of like, go somewhere you're familiar with, do the thing you got to do, and then come back here and tell me about it. And there's not fast travel in Freeside, if I'm not mistaken.
Not really, no.
And so I spent a lot of this episode like doing a thing that I knew what would happen when I was done, and then just walking back and forth between it. And that's not particularly fun for me.
Yeah, it's kind of a drag. The only notes, like the quest worked out the same way for me basically, except I got the ghoul, the cowgirl ghoul. Her name is Beatrix. I think I got her to agree through a speech check. The only other note then is that, well, two notes. One is that when I was at Mick and Ralph's, you can also ask them to make you a fake passport to get into the strip. So that's another callback to Fallout 2 and Vault City, where you could get falsified documents. And then whichever one it is that sells the weapons, I think Mick, if you go back and talk to him, you can ask him, like, hey, so do you have like anything extra, anything special, right? And he says, well, that depends. Are you working for the casinos? And for me, it pops up as a dialogue choice. And the first option is no. And then the second dialogue choice is like a speech check. Also, no. And so if you select the second one in pass, he's like, well, then step right up. And he like a mechanical wall behind him comes down, and he has like all of this other stuff that he's apparently not selling to like the casino families. But I just really like the differentiation between like no and then no with a speech check.
A higher quality of no.
Right. Well, I think, right, is that if you choose the first one, he doesn't let you see his wares. There's something about, you have to say no, but you have to say it in exactly the right way.
Mm-hmm.
The other person that I met in the Mormon Fort is a dude named Arcade Gannon, who is another companion. And he is not in my party yet because when I was talking with him, I didn't have like the high enough persuasion or speech or whatever to get him to come along with me. But Arcade is interesting because his name is Arcade Gannon, I guess. First of all, that's always struck me as like
what?
an astonishingly strange name. And this is Joshua Sawyer's tabletop character. Did you know that?
No, I didn't, but I was going to ask if this is like, because some of the world building for this, or a chunk of the world building for this, was done in a tabletop campaign kind of leading into it, right?
Yes, and Arcade was Josh Sawyer's character during that campaign. And I think maybe even like back during the campaign that they played in preparation for Fallout 2. So I'm sort of curious as to like, where the name Arcade Gannon comes from, how that configuration arrives in one's mind. But the other thing about Arcade is that he sort of talks about, what are the followers of the apocalypse doing? And he says, his kind of research Up until now, people have gotten along using medical supplies that they're scavenging from the old world wastes, and he's interested in looking at how things that like how do we start making our own medicines, right? How do we make our own stim packs and things of that nature? And he talks a little bit about the followers of the apocalypse and blah 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 blah. And he's got a very sort of casual air about him, Arcade does. And he sort of, when he's talking about his research, and he's like, well, if we could make stim packs out of barrel cacti, I guess the locals would have figured it out before now. Nihil sub sole novum. And then you're like, well, nihil what? And he's like,
why do you speak the evil language?
Yes. And he's like, oh, yeah, the Caesar's Legion language. Well, Latin is actually older than Caesar's Legion, and quite a few cool people have spoken it. And through this, you get some interesting background on Caesar himself. Arcade mentions that Caesar was a member of the followers of the apocalypse at one point, and he left. So whatever's going on with Caesar's Legion, it grows out of some precondition in terms of like whatever's happening in the followers of the apocalypse. And I think, that's interesting, especially considering how the followers are sort of presented as like, we just want people to like be nonviolent and get along and help everyone, right? But also, of course, they have kind of this access to old world information or history in a way that at least, means Arcade can speak Latin, and so can Caesar. So that sort of happens. The other thing that happened when I went off in search of Fisto, I had another wacky or weird or wild, I don't remember which word, wasteland encounter, where when I left that robot, like the robotics company or whatever, I was attacked by 3 old women in reference to a gang of old women who are all holding like rolling pins, and this is a reference to a Monty Python skit. So
Lord,
very much classic Fallout 2 style, like here's the type of reference we're going to make, and if you know that this is a Monty Python bit, then you will be overjoyed because you're the sort of person who loves to recognize Monty Python bits, or if not, you're just going to be very confused.
Yeah, it's an odd one, but I guess shout out to them for doing that.
So
do you... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, so like another quest that I got at some point, I think this was through the Atomic Wrangler, was to set up an arrangement between them and the followers.
That's interesting. I got it from the followers side.
Maybe it was from the followers that I got it. So that was like kind of the next thing that I did.
Yeah, so I actually did the King quests first.
Okay.
Let's talk about the King quests and
okay,
because I have kind of like a big thing I ended up doing at the end of this episode.
Okay,
that has nothing to do with any of what we've been talking about.
All right, let's go then.
So to go all the way back toward the beginning of the episode, or near the beginning of the episode, the what was the guy's name? Not Osiris. I don't know why I think that.
It's like Oris or Orin or something.
Yeah, I think it's Oris. But anyway, so he's leading people through, and the king says, hey, why don't you check out why everyone who comes through, who goes with him, says, hey, I want to go with him again. And so you pretend to be, someone who's new to Freeside, and you go recruit him to guide you to the gates of New Vegas, through Freeside. And, he basically says, you get like halfway through it, and he says, hey, watch out. He's well armored. He's cool looking. And he says, hey, I don't like the look of those guys up ahead. Let's take this little side road. And so you go down this alleyway. And as you go down this alleyway, his like character model speeds up and he like, like runs in front of you. And he says, hey, watch out. And you can see there's like dudes around the corner. And you can be like, why did you speed up like that? Oh, no, I'm sorry. He speeds up and then shoots those guys, right? Mm-hmm. He's like, pew, 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 and he just shoots them all. And then so he's like, yeah, I knew they were going to take us out. You're always safe with Oris. And then you can be like, why did you run in front? He's like, don't worry about it. I just had a feeling. And so he keeps going on. It's very clear because, and I get a speech check. It's like, something's not right here. Or like maybe an intelligence check. I think it's an intelligence check. Something's not right here. And it's a weird moment. It's very much a Fallout 2 kind of moment. You can really see the design strain happening here, where obviously he is tricking me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I as a player know that, but my character cannot know that. And for me, immediately, it was a very frustrating moment of like, why is so clear what happened here? Why am I being gated behind this like terrible thing? This terrible check. But these guys are just laying on the ground and they're not dead. And so I just walked up to them and started hitting them with my machete. and he started freaking out. And so it's like, they like pop up and they say, "Oh, I'm not going to take this crap just to make some money from Oris or whatever." So it's a scam, that he's running. But it's a weird moment of friction from all angles of like, there's a disjuncture between what my character and my player knows, but my player can use the other system, the combat system, to just get around it and make my, my knowledge stated within the game anyway. So it sets up a firewall that I can immediately break anyway through another game system. It's really weird. It's something that I could probably write like 20 pages about as far as like what happens in video games that's weird like this. But yeah, these dudes hit hard, by the way. Did you fight them by any chance?
Oh no, I speech checked my way out of this.
Gotcha. Well, I fought these people, and they hit really hard, and they killed me a couple times. So I actually just ended up running back to the king, and the king's dudes are like shooting them in the street. Everyone's getting into a battle besides me. And yeah, like half of the kings end up dead in the streets, and then like all these dudes just disappear after I talk to the king and turn the quest in. And Oris I never see again. It was super weird. But yeah, so that's how that's resolved. And the king is like, yeah, we'll have someone take care of him. And then he gives you the next quest, basically.
Mm-hmm. And the next quest, then, do you want to talk about the next quest, or?
I don't remember what came next. What was the next thing?
Well, the next one is the king has sort of received word that some guys in Freeside got beaten up by like NCR soldiers or something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that is the next.
And
one.
they're in recovery back at the old Mormon Fort, and he asks you to go look into that. So, you head over there and you find the guys in their recovery tent, and they were jumped at night, and there's another callback to classic Fallout where one of the guys you're trying to talk to is like, one of them was named Lou, I think his name was Lou, because everyone kept calling him by his full name, Lieutenant, which is a joke from Fallout 1. This is how the Super Mutants, the first Super Mutants that you meet, have a lieutenant whom they call Lou. So one of the guys is like, you idiot, like that was a military rank, it was lieutenant. And so then I think I went and talked to the king again, and told him that, it seemed like people were addressing each other by rank, and he asks me to kind of investigate what the NCR is up to in Freeside. And the NCR, kind of what they're doing here in this area is they're running a mission, like, an old school style mission where like they are setting up like basically a food pantry. They're handing out food to residents of Freeside who have like been on good terms with them as soldiers, and they're sort of like they're building like their own sort of like NCR sympathetic cell, basically, in this way. And how I ended up finding out about this is that there's like a guy standing off in a corner somewhere, and when you talk to him, he asks you a quiz. He like makes you take a quiz on like NCR history so you can prove that you're really part of their little group. And it's all stuff that you can answer if you've played Fallout 1 and 2. So I do that, and he falls for it, and he's like, great, the food pantry's, over in this other direction back toward that robotics area. And so I head over there, and that's being run by a woman named Major Kieran. And I'm like, hey, why are you getting into it with the kings? Like, what's the NCR's game here, trying to sort of like escalate these tensions? And she's like, hey, we sent like someone to talk to the king, and we got turned away. So like, as far as we're kind of, at odds here in this way. And that's interesting. So you head back, and you find out that what happened was they did send someone to talk to the king, and who they spoke to was the king's second in command, Pacer, who I mentioned earlier. And rather than like granting the audience, Pacer just, told them to shove it and, sent them off. And so the king is really upset. And then like Pacer runs off and he's being held under fire by NCR troops sort of out near an old train station. And I went out and I said, please stop trying to shoot everyone, because that's the kind of character that I can play now again. I can actually use my skill checks for things. And yeah, that's what happened, is I avoided violence and everyone was happy.
Yeah, I basically had the same thing happen. The whatever the conflict is happening there, I missed some like information. Because it's like Pacer and the NCR are fighting, and I was like, hey, the king says that this is all a big misunderstanding, and like people are being murdered in the street because of this. Like people are being gunned down. And I was like, this is all just a big misunderstanding. And they were like, okay, that's fine. Let's all make a deal. And like combat ended. And like it's really clear to me that like Pacer did all this.
Yes.
But I couldn't resolve that with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I couldn't tell the king, like, hey, Pacer's screwed this up. And so, like, Pacer's still the number 2 in command.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean...
It seems weird to me.
Yet another Elvis impersonator failing upward.
I know. That's a huge problem.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, that's something people don't realize is that, when this game came out? 2011? Something like that?
2010.
2010. Back in 2010, it was a huge problem. With Elvis impersonators failing upward and taking up all of the gang jobs everywhere. I mean, you watch The Sopranos, you watch, what ends up becoming Breaking Bad in the preview season. A whole lot of shaking going on that aired. It was kind of Vince Gilligan's early thing. You see Elvis impersonator being a huge part there. I'm really waiting. I don't watch Better Call Saul, but as soon as someone tells me, hey, the Elvis impersonator is showing back up, that's when I'm on board, baby. I'm ready for it. But so this is actually where somewhere with the followers of the apocalypse here too, with getting the on-road for this mission. This is when I worked up the deal between them and the Atomic Wrangler. Okay. And it was like pretty simple. It was just like, hey, do you want to do this? And they were like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then everyone did it.
Yeah, it's like the people at the Atomic Wrangler, the Garretts, they want basically better stills so they can make finer booze. And the followers are not exactly into this because they're running a rehab and detox center. Julie Farkas, who's the doctor with the mohawk, she's like, why would we do this? I don't understand. But I managed to convince her by basically saying, like, listen, if you help them with their stills, then you can ensure that like the quality of what is going onto the street is okay, and it integrates you into the community in whatever way, and also you're going to be getting money and supplies and things like that, and then it just it resolves nicely.
Well, hopefully, I don't know. It seems like there were a bunch of different ways we could have gone with it, and then this was just the most convenient. The other thing I did, so after I do these things with the king, he's like, hey, thanks for helping me figure this out, because now he's like, I'll do you a favor. Right?
Yeah.
We don't have to do another mission for him, right?
Right.
I did so much stuff, all kind of crammed in together and interleaved with each other, that's hard to remember exactly the order of things, even though I just played it like less than 24 hours ago. But yeah, so he says, I'll do you a favor. And, but here's the thing. We haven't said this yet. The man's got a robot dog. He has a dog with a brain bowl on its head named Rex. And he's like, my dog's not doing too well. My dog. My dog is bad.
Problem with my dog.
Got a problem with my dog. The famous Elvis song, of course. Got a problem with my dog. I got a problem with my dog. He's got a bowl for a head.
Yes.
Well, of course, we all know the next lines, which is, don't call me mama because I'm staying in bed. I got dog problems. I got dog problems. You got the whole song. People know it. It's on Spotify. You can check it out. But anyway, so I was like, hey, what's up with your dog? He's like, my dog is broken. My dog doesn't work well anymore because its brain juice is going bad or something. I don't know. I'm an Elvis impersonator. I don't really understand the science. And I said, well, I think I could probably help you figure out this dog brain thing. You know, I think I could probably help you out here. Now, did you do this dog brain quest?
I did not, because I had already been so diverted by other quests and companion quests, because this is a companion quest. So
Yeah. Yeah, so he gives you the dog, and he says, hey, if you can fix this dog, more power to you, Buster.
mm-hmm.
And because he's like, I really like my dog, but he's like having straight up like cognitive biocybernetic failure. And he says, maybe you can see what the followers of the apocalypse are doing, you know, if they can figure it out. And I said, all right, that sounds good. And I go over to the followers of the apocalypse, and they're like, yeah, this dog's biocybernetic systems are failing. And we can't do anything about it because we're not brain dog scientists. But there is a brain dog scientist in the wastelands.
Great.
And I forget what his name is, actually. His name's like Dr. Jones or something. Mr. Jones?
Dr. Jones and me working on Elvis's sick dog.
This is what role-playing games are for. Anyway, his name's something. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what this guy's name is for. And he says his name. He's in a place called Jonestown. It's very far away.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck. And I said, yeah, I've only been playing this game for like an hour. I guess I'll go do this side quest. And then I take a very long time walking into the Alpine Wilderness to get to Jonestown. Or no, Jacobstown, not Jonestown.
Okay.
Jacobstown.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah. So it's called Jacobstown. And as I'm getting closer, I'm like, I think these are super mutants. What are they doing here? And, you know, it's like it's what appears to be the Overlook Hotel, basically, surrounded by a wooden fence. And it's super mutants, and they're like talking it up, and a dude rolls up to me, and lo and behold, this is Marcus from the previous Fallout games.
Yep.
And he's just being a dude.
Yeah. Marcus from Fallout 2 could have been a party member there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think,
and that's what he tells me. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I think I misspoke. I made it sound like I think he can be a party member here, and I don't think that's the case. But he was a party member in Fallout 2.
Yeah, I don't think he would not even entertain like hanging out with me. But yeah, basically he's created a thing called Jacobstown. And if you remember back, he had a good friend named Jacob, like in Fallout 2, and he's kind of like dedicated this town to him. And basically this is his, like, you know, yet another utopian vision from Marcus on trying to create a place where super mutants can live in the world. You know, and previously that was kind of this uneasy truce in Broken Hills between ghouls and super mutants and humans, and it kind of didn't work out and kind of did. There are a lot of people working to undermine it. And so this is his like effort to try to do that one more time. But it's really like a super mutant town. And what he's got here are super mutants and Nightkin, and he is trying to do the work to figure out how to save the Nightkin. You know, that's part of the reason he's here, and that's why this doctor is here, in order to help, quote unquote, cure the Nightkin from their stealth boy-induced schizophrenia. So that's kind of what's going on here. So I can go talk to the doctor. And he says, yeah, that's what I'm here doing. He's got an assistant named Calamity, who's a ghoul, and he gives me a couple of quests. He's like, hey, you know, let's try to figure this out. Or no, actually, he just gives me one quest. Or, you know, he says, yeah, I'll do your dog thing for you. If you help me out, help me figure out where these things called Night Stalkers are coming from. Yeah, they're just like half lizard, half raccoons who are stealth boyed all the time. You go into a dungeon and you figure out that they've been eating a stealth boy, basically, and it, like mutated them all. It's not that complicated. You do meet a Nightkin named Lily. Do you know about this character at all?
Yes, she is a companion character.
She is a companion character. She's fascinating. She is a 75. She was back before the Master abducted her. A 75-year-old woman Because she calls you like dearie and like talks about her grandchildren all the time and all this stuff, and you think that's just kind of, and she's wearing like a bonnet over her head. And you know, I think when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is just like Nightkin schizophrenia, whatever, stereotype stuff. But that's not the case. I mean, she is suffering from some sort of mental problem because she's a Nightkin, and that's what's kind of going on with them. But that's not why she calls you dearie or does any of that. She was just a 75-year-old woman who was abducted from a vault and then was dipped by the master and turned into a Nightkin. And so she's just been continuing to live her life after that. But, you know, has all those speech effects and all those kinds of things of being an elderly woman. So it's interesting kind of stuff. She helps you there and helps you get into the thing. She ultimately helps the doctor do some experiments with a thing called the Stealth Boy Mark II that's been found. And it basically is just a better Stealth Boy. And the hope is that it would alleviate some of the problems for the Nightkin. The Nightkin hate being perceived.
Who doesn't?
You know, they really had... Yeah, exactly, right? They really had they were like meme ready. But they hate being perceived, and like they don't like people looking at them or staring at them at all. They want to be invisible all the time. And so the hope is that the Mark II would have less adverse effects, but would help with that part, you know, that they would allow them to not be perceived like they like. And ultimately, the results are inconclusive. It seems like it's helping Lily in some way, but maybe it's hurting, and she volunteers for, you know, the kind of experiment. But the real effect is that after you do the experiment, this Nightkin leader, whose name I did not write down, he comes in, and he's like, Nightkin dude, and Marcus has already set it up for me. He's like, hey, look, here's this weird spot we're in with the Nightkin. On one hand... the Nightkin are here, and that means that they're going to lure, or it's going to make other Nightkin who come by, it's going to make them feel more comfortable being here, and that's good. On the other hand, we have a very tenuous connection here, and I'm afraid they're going to leave. And if the Nightkin leave this place, they are almost certainly going to wander around the wasteland and hunt more stealth boys and kill more people while they do it. So it's going to be a big problem. We've already seen this happen, right? Like we've seen the Nightkin on the hunt for stealth boys doing stuff that's like really disruptive and violent to the ghouls that we saw before. So I got a little bit of experience with this. And so this Nightkin comes in and he's like, hey, well, you got this stealth boy Mark II. Give us that. We will work it backward with the design, and then we'll go find other stealth boys, convert them to Mark IIs, and then we'll be cool. And so, like, you got to do this complex evaluation in your head of, like, well, if you hand it over, they're going to be running around the wasteland. They're going to be attacking people. They're going to be doing things that will hurt the super mutants in a broad sense. It will hurt the ability for this town to exist. That's bad. On the other hand, the Nightkin will never come here if you eliminate this leader. Because, you know, it looks like the super mutants and the denizens of this town are just murdering the Nightkin as they get here. So, like, what do we do? And there's not a good solution. I ended up killing the Nightkin, like these three Nightkin in particular, because I thought it would be better for everyone if they were not running around killing people. But I don't think that was like inherently a good decision. I just think that was the best decision that was on the table in front of me. But wherever you land on any of this, really importantly, this whole set of quests has set up, and even a lot of the barks and things like that, you know, the ambient dialogue that you hear from the super mutants. There's one that's really good where the super mutant's talking to another super mutant. He's like kind of being conspiratorial, and he's like, do you think Marcus will give us some missile launchers and some miniguns? Because they're like way into that. Yeah. You know, that's like part of their thing. And he's like, do you think he's going to do that? You think he's going to like go get it for us? But this whole thing sets up that like super mutants are human beings. Like, they're people. Yes. Maybe they're not human beings, literally, but they're people, right? Right. They have culture, they have opinions, they have ideas. They are not just monsters. They have a whole deal of life, and in the situation in the wasteland that they're in normally, none of that matters because it's like this competition of resources and violence and all that kind of stuff. But they are doing all the same things that everyone else in the wasteland is doing, and given the right set of material conditions, can just live their life in the way that everyone else is doing. You know, post this deeply traumatic cultural event of being part of the Master's army, which destroys their minds and all these different kinds of things. And it is so disappointing to think about the way that like Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 and, I guess Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 specifically, the way that super mutants are just like big green monsters, essentially, compared to the way that they're being handled here. It's such a bummer to see what the imagination space could be versus what it is. But anyway, that's all to say. I did all that stuff. I don't know how well I felt about, or how good I felt about killing the super mutant leader, but I did all this stuff, and then I was able to replace the brain. The doctor helped me replace Rex's brain. I had 3 options. He basically said there's like 3 different dog types. There's like wild dogs that the Legion have, or the old lady in Novak has a bunch of dogs. And
I don't know who that's referencing. Maybe the woman at the junk shop?
The junk shop. Oh, okay. Yeah. I forget her name. I didn't write anyone's name down for this episode. But he's like, so yeah, I don't know. There's like 3 dog types. Go figure out which dog brain you want. Come back to me. And so I just went to her and I was like, hey, you got a dog brain? And she says, and this is like some ghoulish shit. She's like, yeah, I was going to put this dog down anyway. Anyway, come here, boy. And then you hear this dog murder noise.
Oh.
Like what happens when you kill a wild dog it fades to black. You hear that noise and then it comes back and you have a dog brain in your inventory. So yeah, it was some bleak stuff. But I go back to him and I was like, here's a dog brain. And he says, sweet. Pops it right in Rex and we're good to go. Rex is like living his dog life. He's got new dog brain matter. And that's the end of the quest.
Yeah. I had one other little quest that was not quite this involved. But I mean, I think first of all the stuff you just said about how this frames super mutants and everything, I think that really stands. And also I think that it shows again another difference between what Obsidian does in sort of the macro versus kind of Bethesda things, where you just kind of like went out on this entire leg of a whole, like you had a whole little other episode basically of show that happened out there that I did not touch on at all. And then I also had this other little quest that I did that was not as involved, but still like surprisingly complicated for how little I think it really directly impacts anything else that is going on. When I was looking for, I think I was looking for the robotics place where you find Fisto. I ended up in like North Vegas Square. And as I'm walking through, there's this guy who you like pass this old playground, and there's this guy named Crandon who stops you. And he's like, there's some unsavory characters about these parts lately. Me and my militia or whatever are here to clean things up. Like there's squatters here. We need to take care of them. And I'm like, well, I'll take care of them for you because I'm helpful and friendly. And so I go over and I talk to like, there's just like these characters called squatters who are on this old playground. And I find their leader, who's a guy named Squatter Bill. And I tell him, I'm like, why don't you not squat here anymore, Squatter Bill? Like, you know, he obviously, it's more complicated than this, right? I want them to leave. They don't want to leave. And then I pass a speech check that convinces them that it's probably better if they are not like causing problems for the people around here with guns. And then I return to Crandon and he's like, that's great. Here are some other unsavory characters who have been popping up in North Vegas. And this is sort of like his argument, right? Is that because as sort of Freeside gets more populous and as kind of the NCR is sort of settling in there and the Kings are kind of also got their thing going, like Freeside is already kind of a marginal space to the Strip, and like North Vegas is then like the marginal space to Freeside.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, there's this other gang called the Greasers that have taken up residence in the sewers. And I'm like, the Greasers? Hell yeah. I want to see some Greasers. Some evil Greasers, baby. So I crawl down into the sewers, our first sewers. Remember Fallout 3 sewers? They're back, but now people live in them. I wander around in here. There's a whole bunch of people that are just like named New Vegas citizens, which is interesting. But then there are also there's like members of a gang called the Greasers. And here's the thing. They don't look like Greasers at all. They're just like regular gang members. They don't have
Ugh.
pompadours. They're not wearing leather jackets. I understand. I understand it could be biting the king's style. But if you're calling yourselves the Greasers, you gotta have something more than just like, oh, I'm wearing the wacky like burlap sack hat that everyone in the wasteland is wearing. Anyhow, they have a leader. It's a guy named Greasy Johnny. And I can talk to him and I speech check my way into basically telling him to like stop causing problems for people in North Vegas. And that's fine. And I return to Crandon and he's like, that's great. Here's one other thing. You should go talk to this woman named Mrs. Hostler because her daughter is starting to run around with the wrong crowd of people. So I go and talk to Mrs. Hostler, and she lives kind of off in the general vicinity of like the Ncr Sharecroppers region. There's just like a little house out there, and she's talking. I go and I talk to her. I say Crandon sent me, and she explains that her daughter's been running around with this guy named Andy, and he has kind of a rough crowd around him, and she thinks that her daughter's being pulled into some like unsavory stuff. So, go look into that. Head back to North Vegas. I find out that Andy and his friends have kind of taken up residence in an old hotel. And I, poke around there and I find Andy's room and I find like a letter. I think it's a letter I don't think it's a terminal. Also, I played most of this stuff like 3 weeks ago. So I'm going off of my notes. So anyway, I find a note where he explains that, like, yeah, he's just kind of taken this hostler girl for a ride because her father works for the NCR, specifically like the NCR medical clinic that's off also in kind of the general vicinity of the sharecropper farms. And he's using the daughter to like she's like taking money from her father and like collecting it and then turning it over to him. So I find out about this, and I head back to the Hostler home to let them know what is going on. I think actually specifically her dad maybe works for Crimson Caravan is actually the case. Anyway, right, the dad has a job and the girl is stealing money.
He does work for Crimson Caravan because I met him in the Crimson Caravan place. His name is like Dave Hostler or something. Yeah. And he you can be like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Dave Hostler. And you can be like, who? And he just says, yeah, Dave Hostler. it's a very weird. If you run into him, you should talk to him because it's a very weird like conversation tree.
Okay. So I went back to the house and mom is very upset and the daughter is there. I think mom has like locked herself in her room. Because she's like they've confronted each other and this could clearly go in a couple of ways where like you can convince the daughter to just like kill her mom and take the money and run away to New Vegas. And I think there are a couple of other ways this could spin out too, right? I think you could just like kill everyone and take the money for yourself. But I talked everyone down, got them to get along, and I made the family happy again. So that was the end of that quest. And again, right, it's sort of interesting how many parts there are here and how many different ways this could be articulated when it is not. It didn't even give me all the information about the Nightkin and the Super Mutants and all that stuff. This was like just a weird little. It feels like a quest that is written where the team looks at what is the situation here, right? What types of people live in kind of this NCR settlement? What are they doing? How are they interacting with the communities that are up around Vegas itself? What are the kind of big, a girl in trouble is a big narrative thing, right? There's sort of a noirish element here. But it's just, what are the situations that might arise here and can we make a quest out of them? And that's what they did.
Cool. Yeah. I didn't even get even a little bit of this.
Yeah, no, this game is really, it's wild how divergent your experience can be just because back in one of the Fallout 3 episodes, I said that it feels like Bethesda created a world where none of the pieces never interact. And boy, did this game come to kick my ass specifically for saying that, I guess.
Yeah, and they made this game really quickly too. I'm we'll look at a little bit of the design history as we get toward the end of of the season, but dang, a lot going on. But yeah, I don't think I did anything else other than these things. Oh, I will say, after I got done with the Super Mutants, I came back because now I am ready to call in my favor. I called in my favor with the king. I said, hey, I would like a passport into New Vegas. And you said, okay. And I went and got it from Ralph, and I'm ready to go do that. So I'm heading that way. And a king, like when I teleported back into Freeside, a king gang member runs up to me and he says, hey, the king just wanted to let you know he thinks you're doing a really great job and wanted me to give you this. And then he handed me corn.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also getting this. I also got my passport into the strip, but I just bought a counterfeit one from Mick and Ralph.
Did you see that kid running around chasing a rat with a knife?
Oh, he's chasing the rat with a knife? I thought the rat was his pet.
No. Because when you come in, there's a guy who's selling like meat on a stick.
Yeah.
And you can talk to him, and he's like, hey, you want to buy some meat on the stick? And you say, I don't know. Because remember Iguana Bob, right? Like,
yeah.
It's stuck in my head. And I was like, I don't know. Where's the meat come from? And he says, I think most people don't want to know where the meat comes from. And it's actually going to make for a worse experience if you do know. And I said, I think I do want to know. And he says, look, I have a lot of little helpers who are running around. Help me doing it. And then immediately you see a child chasing a rat with a knife. So yeah.
I saw that and I thought they were playing.
Well, I mean, the line between play and violence is very thin. Brian Sutton Smith said that. But okay, well, next episode we are going into the strip and doing stuff there. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna. I mean, this is a place where the game breaks in a bunch of different ways. So you and I are gonna have to have some conversations about. And when I say breaks, well, it's an Obsidian game, so yes, it breaks in a bunch of different ways. But also in terms of gameplay experience, it also diverges a lot coming up next. So you and I will have to have some conversations about exactly how we're going to handle this, because at this point, or after this point, we're going to have to work to keep our gameplay experiences homologous.
Mm-hmm. Well, if people have ideas about that, leave them in the comments. Michael, we've been forgetting for the past little while, but we should probably do this. What should people comment down in the comments? What is their favorite thing or object or form or idea that they should be telling us about?
What is your favorite Elvis outfit? Real or imagined?
Yeah. Yes. Either one that he wore, or speculatively one that he could have worn in the Fallout-verse, perhaps. And again, thanks to everyone for commenting and feeding the algorithm in that regard. Like I've said several times, just commenting and saying for the algorithm, it increases the comments. Hitting that like button helps us out. All those things put this in front of more people. And when you're a show around the size of ours, putting it in front of 10% more people really changes the numbers and changes how many people actually get to see the show based on this YouTube nightmare universe we live in. So please do that. Thanks to everyone who has been doing that really diligently. We really appreciate it. Hit that like button. Make sure that you have subscribed if you haven't already. Hit the bell so you know every single time something important comes out. Make sure you get an email for it. Check out, get on top of your little tower wherever you live and kind of peer about with your spyglass. I'm on my own tower doing semaphore, making sure that people know when the episode's coming out. All the different methods for doing that. We'll be back in 2 weeks with some more Fallout New Vegas. Michael, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on twitter.com @WarrenIsDead.
You can go to patreon.com/rangetouch in order to find out about all the other stuff that we do. For subscribing for as little as $1 a month, it gets you some extra goodies like a little newsletter. $3 a month, you get access to a RSS feed if you want to listen to this as a podcast rather than watch it on YouTube. It's perfectly fine. Some people do that. And at $5 a month, you support us for the most that you could. I mean, you can actually give us as much money as you want, but at $5 a month, you get access to our other show, Just King Things' bonus episodes, as well as the Range Touch monthly podcast. And, you get some smug satisfaction that you are helping us get to our next major goal for the Patreon, which is $4,500 a month, upon triggering, I don't know, something, we will begin a podcast where we talk about Homestuck. And I've already purchased some things for this, so I really need y'all to help me, contribute money to this so that my purchases make sense. Otherwise, I'm just sitting on them. It doesn't, it's not helping me any.
Mm-hmm. It's the old range touch, standby, or clarion call. Help me rationalize my purchases.
Yeah, I've already spent the money. Now I need a reason why. Michael, you want to take us out on the catchphrase?
We'll see you next time, folks, because war never changes, but Fallout sure does.
Everything changed when the bombs fell, except for war. Play